Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. As always, this is where we answer your questions about media and production 24/7. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always enter your questions by using this QR code that's popping up. That'll take you into the Mukana system, or actually the front end, where you can vote on questions as well. That's the Mukana system. The QR code takes you kind of direct in. Or you can use askofficehours.global as kind of a direct link, because our entire show is run by your questions. That's how we do things. In our second hour today, we're looking at how the idea of color grading is evolving for our new AI-driven world. And Alex is going to be talking to Color Lab AI founder Dito Valentic. So it should be a fascinating second hour. Right now, this is the first hour, which means it's time for your questions. So let's dive right in. What have we got today, Alexander?
First question is from Jeffrey Reyes in Bronx, New York. When traveling, do you check for Ethernet availability in the hotel room, maybe for speed considerations, or to connect a travel router to for all your devices? Is this a thing anymore, or are we just using hotel Wi-Fi?
Okay, let's start with Courtney Gooden. Courtney, what do you think?
I've found that hotel Wi-Fi is really hit or miss. It'll say we have, high-speed internet available, and it depends on where your room is in relationship to wherever their access point is. It depends on, when the hotel was built and what's in the walls. It depends on how many people are in their room trying to stream video to their hotel room. So I always carry my phone with me, and hopefully I use it as a Wi-Fi access point. I set it up as a hotspot and just use my laptop connected to a hotspot on my phone. That's my fallback. And I try not to hook my equipment into wired Ethernet in a hotel room because, unless you're using a VPN or something, it can be dangerous as well because you don't know what kind of protection they have these days. Depends on when the hotel was built. The newer ones have, high-speed Ethernet built into all the rooms, but if you're not staying in an A-class hotel, fallback is always hotspot on the phone.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, there are some hotels that have access, as Courtney said, right in the room. So you'd actually connect up to a specific SSID for the room, which is really nice. I still use my GNet, my iNet GNet. Yeah, that's the Slate. I just got the AX, the Wi-Fi 6 model. It's a small little router, portable router that has the security that you could put on almost anything onto this thing, and be able to have a secure connection. Plus, it pairs all your devices, so they only see one connection going through, which always helps. And that's I use that for my Mac Mini to talk back and forth between my MacBook and my Mac Mini, so I can have the Mac Mini do the work, and then I can just browse on the internet with the other one. So I also use my phone to tether if the Wi-Fi is not great. Vegas hotel rooms are notorious for not having great Wi-Fi, especially, as Courtney said, the farther away you are from the access router, the harder it is to do. And of course, certain times during the day, as people start checking out at about 11 o'clock, they're checking their flights, they're checking car rentals and all that other stuff. So the Wi-Fi is not always at its best at that point. So you got to be a little bit patient. I've taken routers, I've taken travel setups, and of course the phone. And you can also be in a very bad spot. So that type of connection can always be difficult to do.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, it's the first thing I do when I enter the room is I go and look for a port, and if I can't find one readily available, I go looking at the back of the TV and by TV connection. If it's got a Ethernet port there, I'm plugging it in and doing a speed test to see if I can hit it. If I get a signal, then I carry around a little GLI net, and then I go into this, and that gives me out a couple ports, and that way I have a hard line. Then I can VPN with that as well. The other thing that I carry is a AT&T 5G hotspot that also has Ethernet out, so that's my other alternative. And then I can go up to the cloud, or I can go back VPN into my facility where I have faster internet. And that way, if they have slow internet there, I can still do things that are fast through my network. So those are a couple options.
Alex.
I've stayed in a lot of hotels in the last couple of years, and I will say that over the last 5 or 6 years, I can't remember the last time someone had Ethernet. I think the last time they had Ethernet in the room was I was in Italy, and they And I came in and I said, hey, on your website, it says there's Ethernet in the room. And they said, oh, there's no Ethernet anymore. I said, but I brought my whole team here because there was Ethernet. And so they installed Ethernet for me, in that room that day. And I was like, wow, that's what I call service. What I found out was they thought that I was the one of the Major League Soccer teams coming through, and that I was bringing the team because that was there, and they had to make sure that I had Ethernet. When they figured out that I was not that person, a lot of angry Italians. Anyway, so I didn't get a lot of help there. But the in general, I don't rely on Ethernet, the internet. One thing I will say is when I do speed tests, if you see a hard 10 by 10 or a hard 20 by 20, it means they're managing the network. If you see 240 down and 180 up, it means they're not managing the network. What that means is that typically, if it says 10 by 10 or 20 by 20, you're going to get that the whole time you're there. If you see 240, it might be 10 or 1 the next day because they're just open. They're just letting everybody use whatever's available to them. It's two different thought processes of how they do that. But in the high frequency times, as Jeffrey talked about, when people are going in, a lot of times in the morning between 8 and 11, in the afternoon between 4 and 6, it's going to be brutal, and then in the middle of the night, you can upload anything. So you just have to look at those things. But in general, hotels are kind of a mess. I tend to do what Courtney does, which is lean on my cellular. Even when I come on this show, I lean on the cellular because the cellular, even if it's a little slower, is way more stable for a WebRTC connection than a Wi-Fi that's constantly, jumping around with so many APs in a hotel and so many people walking through it. You're definitely going to have a lot of drops. So it's unfortunate because I think that there are people like me that would probably pay extra per room to have a hard line, and I think that there's a lot of opportunities there, but I don't think hotels have figured that out yet.
I'm sorry, not Paul Wallace. It's next question time.
Next question comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. We had a lively discussion of the Lewitt Connect 6 2 days ago, and Alexander Knight, who uses one, wasn't around. Wonder if he agrees that functionality trumps looks and that form follows function.
What do you think his thinking is, Alexander?
Well, yeah, I know I'm just going to cut to it here. So, of course, a lot of us have talked about the Connect 6. I actually don't use one on a day-to-day basis. I simply tested one, and I do like it. I think the preamps sound pretty good, and it's got DSP processing, dual USB on the back, so you can run it to an iOS device. It's class compliant. And you can also run it to another computer. But Paul's talking about the looks. It is a very odd-looking, not typical, rectangular box audio interface. So I don't think it particularly looks attractive. Lewitt always seems to do interesting industrial, let's say, designs. But as far as sound quality and functionality, I'd say absolutely that is paramount, and that is the most important, and it absolutely does that. I just wanted to point out, I just became aware of this, which launched, I think, recently. In the last couple of weeks, I became aware of it. This is the new Lewitt Connect 2. So it's interesting because it's a very different design, and it's geared more towards podcasters and live streamers in the sense that it has these easy mute controls for your microphone, and it actually has features that the Connect 6 does not have. So they claim that it has a denoiser feature. I'm not exactly sure what that is because the Connect 6 has a downward expander you can turn on. So I don't know. The fact that they're calling this denoiser makes me think it's some kind of broadband noise reduction tool. Maybe it's similar to what the MV7 Plus is doing, where it can actually separate human voice from actual real noise. Only single mic jack on the back, single USB, studio monitor, balanced outputs, headphone jack, that kind of thing. But I think the design of this actually looks significantly more attractive. And I think if you're a podcaster or just jumping on Zoom, this is a better form factor because of the physical controls there with the touch-sensitive wheel. And, of course, it has loopback. It has the same control software that the Connect 6 has. If you scroll down to it, you'll find that it actually says you can also change the RGB. I don't know why every single interface these days has RGB colors. Everybody wants to change colors on their interface. Okay, fine. But, yeah, it looks like a really cool product. We'll have to test that out.
Very cool. Thank you for the rundown. Let's go to our next question.
Next question is from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Has Mevo gotten rid of their Facebook integration?
Jeffrey Powers, what do you say?
No, not at all. And I double-checked to make absolutely sure that there's no news article for today. But the bottom line is Facebook is sometimes very interesting to try to connect to. They've made some changes in the last year, and I just saw a post up on Mevo's Facebook page saying that there were some issues about 2-3 weeks ago that they were trying to get. It's basically a struggle back and forth to make sure that connections still happen. But as far as I know, Mevo is not making any changes to Facebook. It's Facebook that's making any type of changes for their connection.
Alex, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, as someone who's had to develop for Facebook, and we kind of just gave up, I'm sure that Mevo is trying to hang on to it, but the Facebook interface changes so often for their developers that it is just, you really have to be committed to it to stay connected because it's just constantly changing. And I'm not sure why it's so disruptive. But it definitely is. And so they're constantly making everybody do something different. So if it's down, I would give it a couple weeks before I decided it wasn't working anymore.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Mark Giuliani in Washington, D.C. I am using Polycam on my iPhone to document spaces in 3D. How do people using Microsoft Windows open and view a USDZ file?
I suspect Alex is going to know. Alex?
You're not going to actually use, it's not going to be you're going to have to look at what makes sense for the PC. So the USDZ, even though it's a very large standard and USD is going to be the industry standard, Windows is a little behind on it. But there are other things that you can export, things like OBJ, GLTF, DAE, FBX. You just have to figure out what a viewer, and Courtney will probably know what viewers want, but you're gonna have to find something other than USDZ because the USDZ viewers on Windows are behind.
Courtney?
Oh, you Apple people in your proprietary formats. No, GLTF.
It's actually not a proprietary format. It's an open
they
format.
Opened it up because Pixar and Apple created it. Yes, you're true. The GLTF is what's available in the 3D viewer. This is a GLTF file, and their libraries are all GLTF 3D viewers. But what you can do is there are converters, such as the ones from ASPOSE, ASPOSE. This is web-based. You just drag, and I'm told that this supports USDZ, and you could convert it, drag it, drop it on here for 3D viewing. It's JavaScript-based, so it runs on a browser. So ASPOSE, so take a look at that if you're going to convert your USDZ files and view them on a Windows platform.
Let's go to the next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania asks, as yesterday, Gordon Capes mentioned a way to detect the signal levels on your Dante network. Did anyone catch how one does that? I think I missed something.
Ooh, if you missed it, I very much missed it because I had a paid client that I had to go take care of yesterday, and I wasn't able to watch the second half of the show, which is upsetting. Oh, Alex, excellent. Alex, did you know?
Yeah, he said to Studio Technologies builds this, and I couldn't find it after the show because same thing. I was like, what was that he was talking about? I was kind of in the mix of the show, and I should have asked him right then. And then later, I was like, I got to figure that out. So we'll see if we can find that out. Mickey does say that there are software meters such as D-Meter by Zenso and a large selection of Dante capable hardware meters. But yeah, and Mickey said he uses hardware or the Wohler IAM SUM. -SUM. I'm not familiar with that. We use to look at our levels in general. We're typically piping those into something like Spectre. Spectre is one of the ones that we look at it on to check those things. So there's a lot of software that will do it. Hardware is nice because you see the nice little levels. Software is nice because you can see so much. Like you can look at spectrograms and spectrographs and organize the whole thing the way you'd like it to work. So those are a couple of options. I would probably end up using software for it as opposed to hardware scopes or hardware levels.
Let's go to the next question.
Werner Puert in Zurich, Germany asks, iPadOS 17 now supports external cameras, including ATEM outputs. Are there telestration solutions available that allow drawing directly on live video feeds and integrating them back into the program view?
Jeffrey, what say you?
Not at this point in time. I've gone through a few different there's telestrators where you can bring in a video and then you can telestrate off of that, but nothing that brings in a live feed to telestrate from as of yet. You got to remember that this is a big security risk for Apple, and so if the app does any type of input, they have to be approved for any type of camera connection there. So once again, it's not impossible for it to happen nowadays with the fact that we have that ability, but it's just not happening yet. If you have your ATEM, you can always bring in through the ATEM your telestrator and use the chroma key to take out the background.
Alex?
And I use a Luma key for this one, not a chroma key, because the edges are nicer. If you use chroma key, you'll end up with stair stepping because of the 422 color scaling. One of the issues you get into is latency. So if you're doing something over video, it's problematic if you're passing it through. What's really nice about doing it the way that I do it is that the entire pattern it's just a regular switcher with a whole bunch of regular I/O, and you just simply draw over top of it. I think that there's somewhere in the future that would make sense to be able to draw over the video. Of course, Video Pencil does that right now with NDI. So Video Pencil will let you go out and back in. So you can look for that. But I like even though it's more hardware, I like the ease of use of the system that I'm using.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question's from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. Final Cut camera for iPhone and iPad enables live monitoring and individual control of each video feed when using live multicam in Final Cut Pro for iPad 2. Compared to Blackmagic camera app, and discuss.
Alex?
I don't think there's really any comparison. This isn't really what Apple's trying to do. Apple used Blackmagic software for their keynote when they did it with the phone, and maybe they would use their own for this. This is a much lighter, easier to use multi-camera solution. I think that for education, for small corporate, for nonprofits, this is a great solution to be able to do a quick multicam edit and multicam capture for this process. It's not a live streaming solution, and it has nowhere near the level of features that the Blackmagic camera has. They're just two different worlds, so it's, and I think that anybody comparing them, I've seen a couple people compare them on the internet. They just don't understand them. They don't understand what either one is doing. So they're not really in the same ballpark there. One is really easy to use. It's designed to make it easy to do multicam. Another one is really stretching. The Blackmagic one is really stretching everything that phone can do as far as how it delivers video content to a drive.
I agree with all of that. One of the things I was dreaming about last night as I was trying to parse through all of the Apple announcements from yesterday was the thought that everybody knows that Apple is anxious to get out of the Qualcomm world and develop their own internal modem chips. And it's interesting to me that we now have this iPad thing that can use iPhones as multiple cameras. At one point, will Apple develop some sort of chip that does really fast streaming out of that? And if so, this little thing they announced yesterday, a few iPhones connected to an iPad as a central switching unit that might have at some future point really high-speed connection out to the world, that would be an interesting streaming play for them to be able to do live switch streaming. It is not here now. This is all completely speculative on my part, but I was again dreaming about why is this form factor? Why have they spent so much time and effort on making iPad a central switching hub for their phones? Might be an interesting thing. Alex, you want to speculate?
And remember, it's not really a switching device. It's really a recording device. Like, it's helping them fire off records and control them. This isn't really designed for live switching. Like, it's not that's not what Apple's doing right now. And I think that if they do the switching, it will be probably very focused on meetings and classrooms and those types of things. It's not going to be, what a lot of folks are kind of focused on for those types of things. And so I think that really where they're going here is just being able to get your multicam records, recorded from those phones. I think trying to stream it is a level of complexity Apple may get to. You're right, but it will be quite some time, years. Before
it was interesting to me that it uses proxies for the live switching locally and then pulls down the original files from those phone cameras kind of after the fact if you want to refine things in Final Cut or something. So it's an interesting, this is obviously a first step, and they weren't able to do this until the M4 chip, which is partially why I was shocked to see their brand new chip going into an iPad before it went into anything else. But it was probably because in the labs they were able to leverage this to do the kind of things they're doing with it. Jeffrey, your thoughts?
Yeah, the M4 is kind of making me nervous right now because it's technically been untested by some of the app developers out there. So, and I'm wondering if that was a curveball that was thrown to them at this event as well. So, you know, whenever you put in a new processor, there's always a chance that an app could go completely wonky on you. So, I'm hoping that they can. The development is not going to be too difficult on that. As for doing any type of video switching, there are some apps out there that allow you to do video switching. Top Director is the one I think of and I use not only for NDI monitoring, but also they have a software switcher option that you can record to from there. As for the Final Cut camera, absolutely, it's meant to, if a band wants to do a multicam shoot from their studio or anything like that, it's meant to record, post process, and then go out rather than live stream or whatnot like that.
Interesting world we're living in now. Let's move to the next question.
Next question is from Guy Cochran in Seattle, and on the panel, what did Jeffrey learn from testing his live streaming capabilities yesterday?
The Cochran. Jeffrey, talk to us about your gig yesterday.
Yeah, you want to throw that ball? Okay. So basically, for one thing that I've been doing is I've been creating a kit that I could walk in, have set up in 10, 15 minutes, record whatever it is, whether it be a band or a presentation or whatnot, tear down after the first set and be out of there in another 10 minutes. That requires having your own power, not running any cables, and be able to, including if you're live streaming, have a source where you can send it out in a reliable format and not hotel Wi-Fi. So I did a lot of testing this last month. There was a new company that I learned of called Nearstream that came on the market. It was think of it like a Mevo, except it's got an optical zoom to it, which kind of was really exciting. So basically, I've been going out to different events and kind of completely unpaid because, you know, I'm testing this stuff and I'm setting it up. And last night's band was it was an outdoor gig, and they were playing. Of course, first set went pretty decent, and then the second set, I started to have all these problems, and there were two things that I came from there. First of all, the venue actually has a cell phone tower sitting right behind it. So if I would have streamed, I would probably had the best service to stream. But the electromagnetic pulses that come through that could cause any type of problem. But the bigger thing is, I think when they turned on their LED lights, which were they were some sort of knockoffs, you could actually see in the video the flickering from the lights on their clothing. I'm pretty sure that was started to affect the Wi-Fi connection, even though I did have the GLI net set up and I had it pointed up high so the antennas could get to the OBSBot cameras, which were the stage cameras. Because I was also testing the OBSBot remote, tail air remote. So I found a lot of bounce back and forth from the Wi-Fi. I'm going to have to bring in something that's going to really test between connections and then see if I can fix that, because I really do want to get a wireless signal going back and forth between the stage. And I have a feeling that's going to include a dedicated wireless antenna that can also run on battery power, because once again, this has got to be completely off the grid for this type of recording.
Thank you. Let's go on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, has anyone had experience with on-demand mentorship platforms like Codementor for development projects?
Alex.
Yeah, I haven't really played with those. I mean, most of them have been video related, video training related, and not necessarily actual mentorship. So it is something that's kind of interesting. I literally don't know a single person that's tried it. So they either go to code camps or they watch videos that are either organized or on YouTube, but I haven't seen anybody using kind of an online code mentor. It's an interesting idea.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Pedro Gonzalez III in Oklahoma City. What is the easiest and best way to share the screen of your iOS device at full screen resolution?
Alex, start us off.
There's a couple different ways of doing it. Of course, you can plug it in. So whether it's USB-C or, you can do a USB-C to or Lightning to HDMI, and then plug that in, and it will mirror it. Another easy way to do this, the way that I do it typically, is I have an Apple TV connected to my phone, and so what I do is I just simply share to the Apple TV. So if you look at let's see if I can get this right. So this is my Apple TV at the moment. As you can see, it's doing one of its screensavers, and what I'll do is I will go into my phone and I'll say I want to mirror to my Apple TV, and when I click on it, you should see, boom, there it is. And if I turn it, well, let's see if I go in here, and you can see now that it's there. And if I turn it, if I had something that was going to show 16:9, it'll do that. If you are actually, what's interesting is that if you're streaming something, so if you go to YouTube or you go to other things, if you're streaming like an HLS or something like that, it doesn't actually stream from your phone to your Apple TV. The phone hands the HLS stream to the Apple TV, and the Apple TV then runs it. So you actually get a different, it plays out there. You'll see a little bit of a stall as it loads that up. But if you're grabbing things from the screen, if you're going to show some kind of interface, that works fine. And I find that to be, so the reason I have that Apple TV connected to my switcher is just anytime I want to show something on my, I don't have to try to figure out the wiring. And oftentimes the USB-C or Lightning to HDMI is a little iffy. Like sometimes the phone wants to do it, and sometimes it doesn't. You absolutely, on the Lightning side, absolutely have to use the Apple converters. The other ones are just a, dumpster fire. So this is just the easiest way to kind of connect it. I don't know if it's the best way, but it is definitely the easiest.
Courtney.
What Alex said is AirPlay, which is available not only on Apple TV, but on most major television manufacturers have AirPlay. Samsung does, Hisense does, TCL does, most of the majors do. The problem, the question I have about your question is full screen resolution. The problem with iOS devices is every iOS device that Apple has made has different native resolutions. Each phone that comes out is like 1125 by 2436, which is not a standard resolution of a TV screen. So it will either put in black bars to fill it out if you want to see every pixel that is on the phone or the iPad. And the iPad, of course, is not 16:9; it's 4:3 or whatever, 4:2.5, whatever its resolution is. It's not the same aspect ratio as 16:9. So it's going to be scaling it no matter what, or cropping it if you want to fill the screen to 16:9 with one of the outputs from your iOS devices. So it depends on which iOS device, but AirPlay will usually manage all that for you and give you either crop it or give you at full screen black bars or at the top and sides.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from David Brady in New York. NDI Access Manager on Windows allows a comma-delimited list of servers, but not so much for Mac. Advantage for Windows. What creative workarounds can be applied to get around this?
Guy Cochran, what do you do?
Yeah, so on the Windows side, you just hit a comma, and as David says, you can have multiple discovery servers listed in your Access Manager, which is helpful if one of those ever goes down. What happens is you lose that whole list, so all your sources would be gone. So on the Mac side, with the native tools from NDI tools, when you download from the website on the Mac, you only get one. And if you try to hit the comma, it doesn't work. So the creative workaround that you're looking for is to go to the link that I just put in the chat, which is the Sienna site. And they have a free tool, which is called Sienna NDI Access Manager. And that one will allow you to put the comma and have multiple discovery servers. So that will do the trick for you.
There you go. Hopefully, David, we solved it for you. Let's go to the next question.
The next question is from me. If you have to use a Lav microphone, what is your favorite and best sounding one?
Jeffrey, start us off.
I use Sony wireless, so I have Sony wireless lavs and headset microphones. I'm going to throw this into a different direction. To me, it's not about as much the microphone as is the mic clip, because the clip gets put in onto lapels in different directions, and sometimes if you have a static mic clip, that microphone might be pointing this way. And if you're in any type of live situation where somebody could be standing right next to the person that you're interviewing, all of a sudden you're getting the voice of that person that's next to them talking in a very louder point. Take a look at Audio-Technica. They have the AT8419. It's a microphone clip that actually turns in 45-degree increments. So if it's set on the lapel like here, causing the microphone to go this way, you can actually turn it so it gets closer to the voice.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I looked at our thing, and Mickey and I both live in pretty much the same world as far as how we look at it. Sanken COS11 is a great microphone, and as well as the DPA. The one that I've used the most probably is the DPA 4060 series. That's the 4060 cores. You can also look at, if in a more noisy environment, you may want to look at a DPA 4080. You have to be very careful with it because it's very directional. It's cardioid, I've used both of those. I probably use the DPAs the most in what I put together from a lav perspective.
And I'm going to say the same thing I always say about microphones, which is it depends on your voice and what you're trying to do. One little anecdote I'll do really quickly is I used to own 3 Sony ECM 44s and 3 ECM 77s. The reason I had both is I ran into a circumstance where a friend of mine was shooting with a Schoeps overhead, and the 44 sounded bad cut against that. The 77 sounded fabulous cut against that. So trying to match the sound profile of other equipment, I had to switch lavaliers. So what are you trying to do? If you're trying to get the best sounds on your individual voice, then you should just try all these. See if you can get to a rental house or someplace else. Try the COS11, try trams, try all the lavalier type microphones that have been around forever, those Sonys, and see what reacts best with your voice for that, because some of them are more top heavy, some of them are more transparent, some of them are more like a dynamic microphone, and you may be looking for one of those sounds to make your voice sound the best that it can. So there's never an easy answer when it comes to microphones. That's why there are hundreds and hundreds of different kind of microphones made. We wish you great luck in getting there. Oh, we have smart people who want to get in on it. So Courtney, take it away.
Well, it depends on your purpose and your application. Some microphones that are designed for film work, for example, are designed to be hidden under clothing, so they have a little bit different frequency response characteristics. They're a little peakier in the high end to poke their way through the clothing, which muffles it a bit. If they're designed for using on a tie clip or something outside the clothing, then it'll have a different frequency response. The COS11 is, as Mickey said, is the go-to for hiding underneath clothing these days, or putting in hair. That's another Broadway shows where they stick it up in the hair and conceal it there underneath a hat. And the trams and the trims have been used, and those have a peakier high end, and they're designed to be used in a vampire clip or hidden inside ties or inside clothing. So check the frequency response, the frequency curve of the lav that you're going to use, and see if it matches your type of use. If you're going to use it in the open and it's designed for use underneath clothing, it may sound a little too much in the high end. You might have to roll it off a little bit because it'll sound a little too brittle or too bright.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, exactly. As Courtney just said, I just grabbed them just to pull them up. But the COS11 is pretty much the go-to. A lot of people have that one. The 4060, be careful as to which one you get on the difference between the 4060 and the 4071. If you're going to bury it, as Courtney was saying, the difference in the frequency response, one's meant to be buried and one's not. And then also how you mount it, have a variety of different tools to be able to make it so that it's not getting cable rustle or any of that. And then the whole chain matters. Are you going to have a cheap Sennheiser, 100 series preamp that's making that Lav sound just okay? Or are you going to have something like a Electro, even the older Electros, the frequency response, we call it the jangling keys test. If you were to take some keys and just jangling and listen to that entire chain, you'd hear the difference of what I'm talking about. So the cheap wireless will fall apart. So listen to the entire chain. If you have to rent or hire, this is again why hiring a sound person that has all these tools makes a big difference, because the way that hits occur, having dipole antennas, there's a lot more to just buying a $400 Lav. So those are some tips.
And Mickey in the chat mentions the Countryman B3, which we used to see a ton of. David Brady says, in the salt mines, we were big on the ECM 77Bs, good for satellite media tours. And if nothing else, and I'm going to say this on behalf of Alex, do not hand somebody a lavalier microphone and have them hand hold it in front of their mouth. That is really not the way they are designed to work. And yes, it will pick up your voice, but it's not going to sound great if you do that. Alex, you want to get in on that yourself?
It's just so absurd. It's so absurd. I'm sorry. I know I'm being an angry old man, but it's just like I watch all these creators holding up their little labs. I'm like,
I knew that was going to say, but it's true.
There's very few things that bother me about all the things that people do for their TikToks and their videos and everything else. There's something about holding up the lab that just looks so dumb.
What are your comments here?
Oh my God.
Well, and what you're hearing now from the professionals who have been doing this a long time is that they actually tune these microphones to do jobs like hide under clothes. So the EQ profile for that, if you take it out from clothes and stick it an inch and a half from somebody's mouth, it is not going to function the way it was designed to function. Alexander, you wanted to get in on this?
Yeah, I've always been curious about higher end labs because I've never used them. I rent a lot of cheap sub $200 ones just because we can't recoup the cost on the higher end stuff. It's hard to justify, especially when a lot of schools rent this stuff. So you get really young kids, and I'm glad we rent the cheap ones because they often come back broken. But I'm just for my own kid. That's why I was asking about, yeah, exactly. But for my own kit, and you guys gave me some great suggestions, so I'm going to look into those as well. But yeah, going back to the holding lavs, you notice people use it as a handheld mic. They'll hold the lav or the transmitter, and they actually use it like I'm going to interview you. Why are they doing this?
The only thing I've ever done is on my 44Bs, I used to, who was it? Was it Lectrosonic? Used to make a little rig that was actually just a metal aluminum channel, and you could clip a lav onto the end of it and hide the wire through it. And in two circumstances, that saved my butt when I had to get a really solid signal-to-noise ratio, and I needed to put a lav right next to somebody's mouth. That's about the only time I would ever consider doing that. Guy Cochran?
Yeah, one more thing. If you're in that world and you're buying new, the core from the DPA 4060 series is the way to go. The microdot connectors will allow you to not terminate them in just any one connection. So here I have a microdot connector. This is a 4060. And then I can do different connectors just by screwing them on. So if I was to do it all over again, because I have Countryman B6s, I have Sankins, and a bunch of different, I have them in Shure, I have them in Electro, I have them in Sennheiser, and it's expensive to have 30 Lavs, so the DPAs are the way to go.
Absolutely. Alex, you wanted to have a final thought here?
Yeah, the only challenge with the microdot is great. I have a tendency for the ones that we have some microdots. I have a tendency to want to use hardwired for the ones that we use regularly when I can. And the reason is that microdot has a tendency to get a little loose, and then you start getting breakup. So it's really like if I'm going to use a microdot on a conversion, a lot of times I'll take a little bit of tape and put it on that, just right on that little thing to make sure it doesn't move. Because if it loosens just a little bit, you'll start to hear crackles in your and it's not the transmission, it's actually the mic connection. And that's probably the most common problem we've had with the microdots.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next question. Fun discussion, though.
Next question is from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. The new iPad is just an iPad, quote unquote, says Marcus Brownlee, and the pencil won't work with previous iPads. Given this new iPad is ridiculously powerful, will a new AI app come along and redeem it?
Alex, what do you think?
I I think that what they're doing is they're aiming it at creatives. If you look at the entire what they showed there, they know that who is going to buy. They finally found their market for who's going to buy these iPads. I'm sure that some of it had to do with the fact that they released Final Cut and Logic, saw the numbers, looked at what's actually happening there, and said, "Oh, maybe this is something we could actually focus on some more." They obviously talked a lot about the neural net, a lot of the neural processing. So there'll probably be more AI, but that's not really going to. AI people are not going to buy iPads because they can do AI faster. Like that's not, maybe another computer, maybe but if you saw what they did with that neural processing with basically Sherlocking Moises, which is the company that makes the thing that separates all your tracks, being able to take Logic, throw any song in there and have it just pop the tracks open. That's the kind of stuff that, for creatives. And if you look at what those brushes are doing, they're really focusing really heavily on creatives for the iPad, because those are the only people that are pushing the iPad enough to make it worth upgrading. And so I think you're going to see more and more of Apple's focus on creative specifically for the iPad, because it's a large enough market to actually sell the iPads into. And I really am glad I'm not, I have a lot of stock in Wacom. I think Wacom's going to do great for right now, but if Apple really gets focused on this and keeps going down this path, it's not that they're going to lose their market, but they're going to have to be very aggressive about how they develop if Apple keeps on going down this path.
Courtney?
Yeah, rumor has it, and you don't know for sure until they come out, but rumor has it that iOS 18 is going to support the NPU cores directly, so that then you'll be able to develop directly to use those onboard NPU cores that are in the latest chipsets. So stay tuned for WWDC. You may see a lot more tools coming out to allow them to do local language models on the phone and iOS devices themselves.
Alex.
And they might, but I think the most serious use of that will be in the M4s with more cores on the desktop machines. And I think that, I, with no knowledge, think that the desktop will probably come out during WWDC.
I thought it was also interesting that the new touch gestures on the new Apple Pencil, the barrel roll and things like that. I mean, when I saw that,
insanely complicated, insanely expensive to develop.
Wow. If you could up and down volume on playback and things like that by just pencil,
I don't know
who
volume, but I do think that the ability to have all those gestures and have all that stuff there, I think the problem for companies like Wacom is that the amount of R&D that was required to build that pencil might be out of their reach. That is a very, very complicated pencil. What it's doing, and it took a lot. And Apple's continuing to do this is that we're going to play a game that, hey, let's play a game that no one else can play. And because we can throw $1 billion at it, or $500 million at it, or $100 million at it to figure it out, and most of their competitors can't or won't. And I think that pencil is a really good example of that. I think you just really want to look at that. I've watched it a couple of times about describing that, and what that has to do that effectively at an Apple level. That was a lot of work.
Well, it reminds me of those connectors, the Thunderbolt connectors that have incredible detail in the wiring. Yes, they cost a lot. They cost
this is
40
infinitely more,
a lot more than regular ones. But they're doing some amazing.
It's one thing to build a wire. It's another thing to use the way that thing is working. I mean, as someone who's worked with some teams that have worked on hardware, I can't even imagine the difficulty it was to build that. I know it seems like a simple thing. Apple makes it like, oh, you can just do it. It's really easy. But the amount of work to make that work fluidly, incredible amount of work and R&D.
Let's move on to the next question.
Next question is from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. I have the iPad Pro M1 12.9 inch, 1 terabyte with 16 gigs of RAM. Should I trade it in for the new iPad Pro M4?
Jeffrey, what do you think?
See previous question. No, I have the M1 11 inch, and it suits me for what I do just fine. If you're planning to do a lot of the functions that they're talking about, what we were just talking about with Final Cut Pro, if you need the neural processing unit off of there, if you're going to be getting the pencil, you like the features of the new pencil, then yeah, go to the M4. To me, it's been a back and forth. I know they say it's 100 times faster than the iPad that I have, but a lot of my production doesn't happen on the iPad. It would be great if I get on a plane and I don't have to pull out a MacBook or any type of laptop to do any type of post-production. I could just do it on my iPad because of all the space that you save when you're sitting in an airplane seat. But for the most part, yeah, that's going to be the big factor, is if I'm going to start doing more production from there. There's nothing wrong with an M1. And of course, that's not the only iPad that they talked about yesterday. You can always get a regular iPad Air or an iPad, and you're not going to have all those great features, but you're going to have a little bit newer, a little bit better iPad.
Alex?
I have the same one that you have, Tony, right here. $560 trade-in when you buy the new iPad. So so I'm probably going to. I'm working on this. Will probably go into a box to do exactly what you just asked.
Ah, dear. I will say that I think 100%, and we've seen this in the comments too, what do you need to do with it? That's really the decider. You probably use your iPad pretty heavily since you do conversations with Tony Mobley and things like that. I do a lot of audiobook narration nowadays, and my iPad Pro, which is probably 4 generations back, is my constant companion when I'm marking up manuscripts. That with an Apple Pencil is the best way I have found so far to read the book initially and make all my notes in the margins and things like that. And then that reflects through iCloud back into my main computer for when I sit down to actually perform the book. So I don't need anything beyond that. That thing is absolutely fine with my older iPad Pro. When I get a new one at some point, and I'm sure I'll be tempted at some point, it'll just work better. Great, win-win. Don't have to do it now, can do it later, but it's great capabilities to have. Courtney, you had some thoughts?
Tony, for what you're using your iPad for, the M1 is probably plenty powerful enough for you. And what you might do is, instead of taking the bait and upgrading to that the newest, latest, and greatest iPad Pro, just go on the Apple Store and look at the refurbs and buy another one of the M1s, because they're going to be discounted even more. And you can then have 2 of them, which is probably a lot more productive than one with a faster speed. So with 2 of them at the slightly slower speed that you're not really using all of anyway, is much more productive. You can give one to your wife, one to the kids, and you can be twice as productive for the same price as one of the new ones.
Let's move to the next question.
Next question is from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I now have a mixture of PTZOptics and Lumes PTZ cameras on my network. Can PTZOptics control software connect to any PTZ cameras on the network? I'm having trouble getting the software to see the Lumens camera, even with their IP addresses in there.
Jeffrey Powers, what do you think?
So, first of all, PTZOptics has 2 pieces of software. One's the Hive, which is not out yet. And then, of course, I think he's talking about the camera management platform, which is still in beta. The thing is that PTZOptics is... it's basically software for PTZOptics. I know that there's some cross-compatibility. I remember this. This is one of the Huddle. You might think this is the HuddleCam camera, but a company called Avaya actually put this out. So what happens is they do their manufacturing overseas, and then certain contracts run out, and all of a sudden these manufacturers decide to redistribute the technology to other companies, which is why you see on Amazon a lot of PTZ cameras that have some weird names to them, using close to the same software, and probably if you did a firmware update, you could load it onto that camera. So it's really shoot if it's not the fact that it's a PTZOptics camera. Even Huddle Cam cameras and PTZOptics cameras don't work in the same on the same software. I have the Simple Track that I can't connect up to the content management platform system. So, and of course the software is still in beta. But the short answer is no, you shouldn't be able to. But if you can, it's just an added feature.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question from Jeffrey Reyes in Bronx, New York. Alex, in the early office hours days, you used to use a Countryman or DPA microphone. What advantage did those mics give, and why was the change to a stand-mounted mic?
Alex.
Portability. So a couple of things. One is I hadn't figured out what mic I wanted to use, and I at the very beginning I wanted it to be kind of light. I decided that I just really wanted the best possible audio quality that I could get, and so I wanted to be at a great mic at the right distance and not worry about anything other than sound quality. So they're very high quality. Both the Countryman and the DPAs are very high quality headset mics. They're prone to a little bit more sibilance, so you hear a little bit more of the S's that you don't hear as much of. It's not that you don't hear any of it, but you don't hear as much. On this mic. This is a Neumann TLM 102, and I've used the Stellar X2 for quite some time. Earlier this week I was using the Heil PR40 because it has more off-axis rejection, and I was in a louder environment. So it just really depends on what the mic is. I still travel with either the Countryman or the DPA, and the main reason I do that is because I need to be able to pack it into a smaller. So having a stand and a mic and everything else is a lot that I have to pack, and it's easier to put the headset in. So I just switch back and forth as needed. Still use the headset mics also if I'm doing walk and talks or anything else because I need both hands.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Friera, Florida asks, is Lewitt planning on a USB-C version of the new Ray mic? And there's a link.
What do you think, Alexander? You know a lot about Lewitts.
I'm just going to get the Lewitt CEO on the phone here. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Maybe. As far as I know, Lewitt doesn't have a USB-C or any USB mic. So I think that it is a possibility, a strong possibility. They've been making pretty strong pushes into the content creator market, first with the Lewitt Connect 6 interface. Now the Connect 2 is out. And now they have this Ray microphone has some really cool features on it, and it's still an analog XLR microphone. So I think logically the next step would be to make a USB-C version because everybody on the market has got to have a USB version, and I think that makes sense. So we'll see.
Jeffrey?
It depends on if the technology inside that microphone can pass through a 5-volt system, which is what the USB standard is right now. If it can't do that, then either they'll have to have an external power to it, or they'll just have to stick with XLR. In some cases, I really hope that they stick with XLR and use that because they're probably using phantom power to power their insides. But hey, we'll see what happens. There's always going to be another company that's going to try and knock off what Lewitt is doing and possibly make a USB version. We'll see how that works.
Courtney?
Yeah, and USB-C does support higher voltages up to 20 volts, or 24 volts, I think even. It goes 5, 7, 9, 12, 19, and 24 if it's USB-C. But the thing is, you got to remember, if you're going to go to USB type connector and you're going to deliver digital audio out of the bottom of that mic rather than analog audio, you've got to have a pretty good preamp inside in front of that A to D and an A to D converter that converts it to digital before going to USB, formatting it for USB-C and sending it out over the USB-C connector. So the quality of the preamps you're going to be limited to inside that microphone are going to be probably a lot less than the quality of the preamps you can plug it into if you're just going in with an XLR into a high quality preamp over phantom power.
The reason I'm laughing is in the comments I read Mickey's comment, and he says, a microphone that has the ability to make adjustments and even mute itself automatically is quite a horrible idea. So says an A1 who probably has opened up a lot of mics that were muted by accident. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Microsoft will be ending support for Windows 10 in 2025. What have your experiences been with Windows 11 in production?
And let's go to Alexander Knight.
Well, I haven't used Windows. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Technically, I guess what I do is called production, but it's pretty amateur if you consider podcasts. But I do have a couple of Melee PCs running Windows 11, and they're fine. In my organization, we have 100 stores plus in Canada. They're all Windows 10 on really ancient, out of date PCs that are not capable of being upgraded to Windows 11, and I think that's going to be a problem for a lot of corporate enterprise customers, and I think they're going to continue to use Windows 10. I guess the question is, if they're saying they're ending support in 2025, that probably doesn't mean that they're going to end security patches. Usually it takes Microsoft quite a long time before they just stop doing any kind of patching whatsoever, and they have a lot of corporate customers on Windows 10, so I can't say with certainty, but I'm sure they're probably going to continue to at least provide security patches for the foreseeable future there. And it's expensive. I mean, if you have a lot of computers that you got to upgrade, it's expensive, especially if they're not capable of meeting their hardware requirements for Windows 11. That's another issue altogether.
Jeffrey.
So Windows 11 basically requires UEFI compliant BIOS from there. There are some hacks to actually work around that right now. Of course, that's not recommended for Windows 11. As for Windows 10, the free support is being discontinued. They are going to continue with a paid support, and that's what everybody's been complaining about in the last couple of weeks, is this, you got to pay for Windows 10. But it's really, you got to pay for Windows 10 if you want to have them do any type of updates, as Alexander said. The security updates, anything that's going to be critical, security updates will have an update for Windows 10. But for the most part, if you want to do the basic updates, if you want to get something just stops working, if you want to get them to fix it, then you're going to have to pay for that support.
And Courtney.
Yeah, what Jeffrey said, they're still going to support it. I've still got Windows XP. In fact, all of our prompters are running Windows XP, and I think you'll find that there are probably a lot of Diebold ATM machines out there still running Windows XP because it's stable and because it's not on the outside internet, so they don't have to worry about security issues and hacking issues that XP is very vulnerable to. And all of our prompting software is rock solid because we never connect to the internet off of our equipment. So you can continue to use older versions of Windows. The software that I wrote back in 2000 and 2001 still runs on Windows 11. So you're not going to run into the problem of your own proprietary software being orphaned. Windows just does this every now and then. They deprecate previous versions to try and nudge you into buying new hardware and new versions of Windows. They do it all the time. You can still run older versions of Windows without any problem.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Andre Dole in Berlin. What software are panelists using for warehouse equipment management? Are you checking out and in each single piece?
Alex.
Most people that I know are still using Google Sheets. so there's a lot of times larger production companies have stuff in the cases that have lists that are in there, like this is what the case needs when everything gets broken back down. I know that there are we've tested lots of warehouse stuff, and it's either been out of our price range and pretty complicated, or it just didn't work well enough. The problem you get into is you build a system, and if no one's going to use it, it doesn't matter whether it exists or not. And it's just really hard. You have to have the simplest version of something that someone can just open up, or they just kind of move past it. And so that's what everything that we've tried so far, trying to get the warehouse staff to actually adopt it regularly and reliably. If it's not if it's 98%, well, that's what I'm getting now. like 98% of the stuff coming back. So it really has to be something that everyone's full bore on. And I don't think almost everybody that's built these warehouse platforms did not go to any class on user interface. Like they're just, I mean, I think they actually went on a class on how to really make people unhappy and frustrated and confused. And so I think that there was how do we make this actually worse? And then they did it. So they, it's just so painful to look at all the software. So as a result, most people lean back into Google Sheets.
I had exactly the same experience. Once upon a time, I had this fantasy that because I was accumulating so much equipment, I should get a barcode reader and put barcodes on all the equipment to check it out and put it back in. It became so much of a hassle to try to manage and get everybody on board with doing it that it crashed. The whole system that I had spent a significant amount of time on just literally crashed and burned in the first month that we tried to implement it. Sometimes simple and maybe even putting up with a little shrinkage because you don't want to make something so tight that you're trying to keep track of every single thing is a better solution. That's my 2 cents. We're getting ready. In just a minute, we're going to be welcoming our guest, Dado Valentic from Color Lab. This should be really exciting. He's going to discuss color grading and color management in the coming AI-driven future. So if those of you who are interested in where colorist work is going, you're going to want to stick around for that. Later tonight, also, Alex is going to be having a fireside chat with Andy Carluccio of Zoom. Most of you who have been watching the show for a while know Andy, and an incredible resource. Just listening to him really helps you kind of understand the landscape of these networks like Zoom and what is coming up. So that's going to be tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific. You can find the interview right here in YouTube and in Mukana. For tomorrow's show, CJ is going to be hosting a show centered on personal travel kits. What do you take with you when you travel, when you go out of town? And that's tomorrow in the regular show. And don't forget, after hours, many days right after the main show is done, there's additional educational content on topics like Mevo, Live, Isadora, and other tech topics where we help you understand and master these aspects of the production arts. Alex will be right back with Dado Valenti very soon.